Amitakiapi, Ompetuan Upia, Winuna Hamacha, Gwen Westerman Makiapie, Sisituan Wakpetuan Oyate Hematan. Hello everyone, I'm Gwen Westerman and I'm happy to talk about From These Hands, an exhibit of my poetry and visual art. This particular piece is the title work of the show, and it incorporates the hands of my mother and her mother. My grandmother was a quilter, and in 2002 I sent her a letter and asked her to trace her hand, and I gave her an envelope to send it back to me. I did the same with my mother, and 4 months later they both passed away. So I was very glad I did that. And so I traced their hands in fabric and manipulated them here to be stitching the little woman here on the plains, connecting the earth and the sky. And that means a lot to me to have my mother's and grandmother's hands incorporated into this work. This piece is called Buffalo Ridge 1, and it was inspired by the landscape of Blue Mountain State Park in southwestern Minnesota, which also has a bison herd on site. And when I went to take photographs to do a study of the landscape there, I stood at the highest place in the park and took photographs 360 degrees from where I was standing. And it wasn't until I got home that I realized that along the horizon, 360 degrees from Blue Mountain State Park, were wind turbines for as far as you could see. It's called Buffalo Ridge, and this place plays a key role in wind production for this part of the country. So there are turbines almost everywhere, from Iowa clear up along Minnesota border with South Dakota into North Dakota. But wind turbines have replaced the bison herds, at least in terms of the way that I was looking at the landscape here. So I incorporated the shape of a buffalo with the heart still strong, and used the words of a Dakota song. And the words of that song are Mitakodapi, Daku Ota Omakuapi, Dena Kawaki Peshni Echish Hanach Wani. My friend, many things are chasing me, but I'm not afraid of these because I still live. And I thought that was almost a prophetic kind of vision for this space, the landscape here, once the bison returned, that regardless of what happens from a human perspective in these spaces, the bison are still alive and still living in their original environment in southwestern Minnesota. So I incorporate a lot of Dakota language into my pieces, and this particular song is one that really speaks to me in terms of resilience and survival for all of us. We'd also like to thank the Heritage Center at the Red Cloud Indian School, who loaned us Buffalo Ridge 1 from their permanent collections. This is Buffalo Ridge 2, a variation of the other piece that I just talked about. And it's incorporating hand-dyed fabric in the sky and in the bison on the foreground. More of a summertime view of this particular place in Minnesota at Blue Mountain State Park. In this piece, the wind turbines play a less prominent role in the landscape, and the buffalo comes to the foreground as the main focal point. And that stresses this idea of summer and a time of abundance and strength. And the words of the song are here as well. The same thing. I still live. Hanach Wani. Dakota culture and history inform my work in a number of ways. in the incorporation of traditional quilting designs, such as the 8-pointed star, the use of language in the pieces Buffalo Ridge 1 and 2, and again here in terms of history, this piece is called Chesky's Pardon, and it is also inspired by the Mexican retabla form that is used to honor saints and other departed relatives. And so the story of Chesky is that on December 26, 1862, he was hanged by mistake, along with 37 other Dakota men who had been accused and convicted of war crimes during the war between the United States and the Dakota people in 1862. And Chesky had played an important role as a leader, as a community member, as a strong voice for our Dakota people. And so I wanted to make sure that he was remembered in a way that was befitting of the sacrifice that he made for our community at that time. And in the spirit of that retabla tradition, there's a little banner above his head that says, Unshi Vichara Wo Daku Echumpi Ki Hana Storia Bishni. And that is, in Dakota language, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And we really appreciate the Minnesota Historical Society, who allowed Chesky's Pardon to be part of this show. Landscapes play an important role in my artwork also, and I spend a lot of time taking pictures and documenting the change of seasons, sunrises, sunsets, and incorporate those into the works that I create. This particular piece is called Return to Crow Creek and documents the story of the horses coming from Canada with their riders back to Crow Creek toward the end of the 19th century. And the horses are made with a paper-pieced pattern that I created particularly for this piece and have used in my work elsewhere as well. Rivers play an integral part in our Dakota culture and history. They were our travel ways, they are our life ways, providing us with food and water and shelter. So this triptych portrays the history of the Mississippi River. First one, Otokahia, in the beginning, represents how I envision the way the falls of the Mississippi River appeared 10,000 years ago when they were in St. Paul, what is now St. Paul. The power of the water, the flow, the movement, and the incredible significance of those falls and that river played for people as they began to populate this place. The centerpiece, Owamini Omini, depicts the falls as they were recorded in 1770 in a lithograph. And here the power of the water is less than 10,000 years before, but you can also see how the landscape has shaped to something that resembles more of what we see today along the Mississippi River. And on the far bank are 7 small teepees to show that Dakota presence has been documented at this place in that time. The last piece in the triptych, Petu Sapawi, it incorporates a story of Dark Day woman who went over the falls in a canoe with her young son in response to her husband taking another wife. And In this piece, you see the outline of the metropolitan area along the Mississippi River. And the edges of the buildings are a little bit crumbly. The Stone Arch Bridge, a major landmark in Minneapolis, is readily recognizable. There's been a lot of pollution in the river over the centuries of inhabitation, in the centuries of milling and industrialization along the Mississippi River. And it affected the water quality. And for many years, freshwater mussels were no longer viable in that environment. So at the forefront of this particular piece, there's a small mussel shell with a little pearl in it, and that represents the resilience of the freshwater mussels and their reappearance in the river at some point in the future, even after the buildings and the factories and mills have crumbled away. And I'm happy to say that this past year, freshwater mussels were found above the dam, above the falls, in the Mississippi River. So there is some good news about our river today. Tree of Life uses the tracings of my mother's hands and my grandmother's hands to represent the connection of 4 generations in my mother's family. My grandmother's hands are the roots reaching into the soil, the nutrients, the stories that are embedded in the land. My mother's hand makes the base of the trunk of this tree of life, then my hand, and then the hands of my daughter as the new growth and the leaves of this particular tree. Stitched from the soil all the way up through the tips of the top branches, or my daughter's hands, are veins that bring that nutrient from the generations up through to the top, and to continue to show the continuance of our family line. Dead Nkupi, we are here, represents the spirits of the 38 men who were hanged on December 26, 1862 in Mankato, Minnesota. They were our medicine men, they were our leaders, they were our teachers, our fathers, our brothers, our sons, our grandfathers, and here they're represented in spirit form. Blue is the color that we associate with spirit as Dakota people. And I wanted to show just how many 38 people is. When we talk about the 38, it seems to be an abstract number. So I wanted to show in a physical form how many people that actually is. Each figure is hand painted. I sang to them as I painted, and then when I brought them to the show in 2012 here at Gustavus in the Hillstrom Art Gallery, I was overwhelmed by how they moved as people moved through the gallery. It was almost as if the panels themselves were reacting to the crowd in the museum. And I know it's just the movement of air and heat, but still it brought these figures to life in a way that I had not anticipated when I created this particular set of panels to represent those important people in our culture and our history. Covalent bonds. We are dream carriers, child bearers, those burdens born with hope and intensity under the gravity of responsibility, history, and love, not guilt, love, and hope for those who will dream and share these burdens born. We do not give up willingly, but attract and repel, balance and share stronger in that bond of love. 38. We rise together, singing our prayer as one. Hear us. We are here, standing at the center. See us. We do this today so our people will live tomorrow. We offer our hands as human beings. Remember us. We come from the stars. Stellar nucleosynthesis. That explains where everything in our universe came from, according to astrophysicists who only recently discovered the cosmological constant causing the expansion of our universe. Our creation story tells us we came from the stars to this place, Bedote, where the Minnesota and Mississippi rivers converge. Our journey along the Wanari Chonku in our universe, that stargazers later called the Milky Way, now disappearing in the excessive glow of a million urban uplights. The original inhabitants of this place, of our universe, we are Wichachpi Oyate, star people. And we will remain here as long as we can see ourselves in the stars. Hana Unkiksuyapi. We are star people. Wichachpi Oyate He Untahampi. Our legacy is as diverse, as present, as absent as stars in the sky. In the brilliant light of day, we see just one star, our sun, but those other stars are not gone. At sunset, they appear again. Bright city lights may darken them, but they are not gone. Our point of reference veils or clears our vision. To create beauty from tragedy, healing from trauma, is not a battle for supremacy of a single story, but a process of new understandings that evolve as we evolve. But where does true memory reside? Our past is recorded in our way of life, our traditions, and in the living hearts of our people. Our stories shine there like stars, and we remember those. Root words. Prairie grasses have roots twice as long as their height, deep footings that steady them against unremitting winds that sweep across the plains. Their roots reach beneath the parched earth stricken by heat and cold, and nourish them on the remnants of a vast inland sea that teemed with copious sounds of life long ago. Our language is like those prairie grasses, surviving the fires of missionaries and their gods, floods of English words, drought, growing in unexpected places as if it had never been gone. Makoche ki etanhan umhipi, ikche wichashta te chigapi, dakote I api te umhida.